Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is, what's today? Wednesday, September 20th, 2017. I just watched a super scientific documentary yesterday that told me the world is going to end. I think you probably all have noticed online that people are talking about the world's going to end on September 23rd, 2017. Is that Saturday? I'm busy. 21st is tomorrow. Yes, that brings me to a programming note that I'll have to share with Greg. Of course, tomorrow's Rosh Hashanah. Of course, you know that because you went out and bought a calendar that had the Jewish holidays on it based on the opening of yesterday's show. That takes me out of the game tomorrow, and I've been thinking about it all week, meaning to record a show ahead of time and then not doing it. So I guess that's what the rest of my day will be like. I have my schedule set for today. How's your day? Are you flying anywhere on a private charter jet? That's occupying a lot of the chatter time this morning on Twitter. Everybody upset about Dr. Tom Price Tag taking a $25,000 charter flight from D.C. to Philadelphia, just one of several, and I believe 5 charter jet flights that he took in a single week. Mr. Look out for the deficit. Oh my God, the government spending is out of control. In the business, of course, of taking away your health care any way he can to save the government money. That's not even really why he wants to do it, because, of course, he's wasting all that money flying himself around on charter jets. Of course, previous secretaries of Health and Human Services apparently made a habit of flying commercial but not price tag. He's going to fly around the world, living the high life, jet setting everywhere he goes. And I guess, people pointed out this morning, it's quite right. This is what happens when you run the government like a business. In other words, when the executives treat it like the money grows on trees. It's not mine, it's corporate money. It's not mine, it's taxpayer money. I'm just going to fly around the way I like to fly around. The guy's worth several $1 million, allegedly, all by himself, thanks to insider trading, of course. We all know that to be the case. But he won't spend any of that money. It was hard stolen. He's going to spend your money on it instead. So that's being much chatted about. And, of course, observers pointing out you really actually kind of have to go out of your way to spend $25,000 to get from Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia. Most of you know approximately how the United States is laid out, and you would know, of course, because of that it's about, you can drive there and back. If you're driving yourself and sitting in a little bit of traffic, but you get a good head start, you can make it in 3 hours. You can make it in 2.5 if the traffic's really light, but the traffic rarely is all that light. But and also even good points from conservatives who are angry about it. I saw John Podhertz today, who I don't follow, but someone retweeting him. You know, that's like a 2.5 hour drive, really, honestly. How did he put it? You know what? I can't even remember. I blanked out now about what it was that he was saying, but just essentially that it's pretty ludicrous to spend. Oh, yes, that's right. He was reminding everybody that in prior Republican administrations, people lost their jobs or were forced out of their jobs for taking a car to New York at government expense. A limo, right? But I mean, how else would you, that's kind of how you do it. You might take the train, whatever, but a $25,000 charter. I have flown, by the way, from D.C. to Philadelphia. It didn't cost me nearly as much. Why did I do it? I had to get there actually right away. And also someone else was paying for it. And I guess I didn't feel bad about it. It's not a great thing to do. And it was easier then, of course, now with security, et cetera. You could probably walk to Philadelphia a lot faster than you'd be able to get through security, especially if you're coming and going in the same day. Anyway, it's quite annoying to find out that people are doing this. And I'm sure you'll be quite annoyed by it when you hear all about it. We'll discuss it a little bit. We'll see what else there is for discussion. Greg already preparing his stories going forward. It is a day it's a Wednesday without Joan McCarter. Joan McCarter doing her best Ivanka Trump imitation by going on vacation. I don't know if she's gone anywhere, so, it's hard to imitate Ivanka Trump. You have to spend thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of dollars going to exotic locations at critical moments, and it's not necessarily that critical. We can follow the healthcare story and the healthcare debate just fine. It would be a little better with her, I'm sure, as most things usually are. But we do have Greg Dworkin with us, and he's following that story and others. Good morning, Greg. How are you doing?
Good morning. Very well. I'm a little bit confused. Maybe you can help me out here.
No chance.
What is it that Republicans object to about Bob Menendez?
I do not know.
He took a bunch of money from other people to live a lavish lifestyle above his means. I mean, sounds like he could be a cabinet member.
He could be, and maybe that's next in his... You might have to be convicted first. I'm not really sure how it works to get onto the cabinet, but anyway.
Maybe he just needs to do a year or two of insider training as, the apprentice and build up his own personal fortune a little bit more than he did, although he did a pretty good job of it.
Yes, well, it comes from having personal friends with a tremendous amount of money who like to lavish it on you, I guess.
Like I said.
Yeah, well,
So what are they objecting to? I don't get it.
It's the friend part. I guess, because Tom Price doesn't have
maybe it's the D after his name. Maybe that's the only thing.
That could be it, or the Hispanic
because on principle,
heritage,
I mean, what's the difference between him and the cabinet members?
Nothing, of course. They're stealing it largely from taxpayers, whereas
they're stealing it from you.
He's stealing it from just a single taxpayer.
Therefore, he's much worse?
Yes. Obviously.
Because that's why I was asking you for explanation.
You weren't listening to you're not in Cassidy logic mode yet.
Speaking of Cassidy
logic
him
mode,
explaining
a lot to talk
his bill. About that.
Now I understand how they work.
Okay. So we have this Graham Cassidy, Heller Johnson. I include those other two because they don't get away with pretending they're not as stupid.
Okay.
As Cassidy and Graham.
Take Kimmel off.
And Jimmy Kimmel will come into this too as well. In fact, there's a great piece in Vanity Fair about that. And then, of course, there's Cassidy's response. Mm-hmm. But basically, what's happened is that as a last-ditch effort, quick summary for your listeners in case they're not on top of it, but they probably are.
Yes.
There's one last chance to do a partisan Obamacare repeal, and Graham Cassidy is it. And in fact, many senators are making the case that this is the last gasp. You have to do this because there's nothing else. There's no other vehicle. Now, there was another vehicle. There was Lamar Alexander working with Patty Murray in a bipartisan fashion on the Health Committee, which is what John McCain wanted to have happen. Mm-hmm. And McConnell is trying to play hardball as best he can and pulling the plug, essentially giving Lamar Alexander orders to give up on it because everybody should be concentrating on Graham Cassidy, the only vehicle, which can only be the only vehicle if you get rid of the other vehicle.
That's one way to get to it, yeah.
Right? So he shut that down so that you don't have any alternative. And the other way that they're playing hardball is, here's a piece in BuzzFeed, Republicans threaten to let Obamacare markets fall into chaos if repeal fails.
Oh, well, yeah.
Right?
That was
Obamacare's collapsing. There's no appetite to prop it up. We won't allow Alexander and Murray to do anything about it, and therefore it's going to fail. So you have to do this. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos.
Well, there's going to be chaos.
As if it isn't chaos, right?
Yeah.
This is somebody pointed out on Twitter that we're actually at the point where the Republicans are essentially saying, repeal Obamacare or we'll shoot the dog.
Yeah. Well, that's it's. I guess it's been a long time coming that it finally clarified itself. But I think everybody knew that's what was going on. They've been sabotaging it for so long. But okay, now we're able to admit it, I guess.
Well, but now it's all in the open,
right.
And it's coming to a head because it has to be settled next week. And the funny thing is, even with all of that, they still don't have the votes.
Well, good.
How do you know that? Because if they had the votes, it'd be on the schedule and they would have voted.
True. I did get, for instance, it could have happened today. It could have happened tomorrow. If they have the votes, they would do it.
But they won't. They have a bit of a recess, right? So what they're going to do is say, okay, it's tentatively penciled in for Wednesday next week.
Okay.
After the CBO score comes out and says it saves money by not spending anything.
Well, yes, I guess it could say that.
Well, it is. I mean, it's like billions of dollars and trillions of dollars that will no longer get spent. So therefore, it's going to have to save some money.
I guess.
Because part of the CBO score is to make sure that it fits reconciliation. Now, the other part, the little, minor part about how many people lose their coverage and what it does to premiums is too complicated to figure out right away. So they'll do that later. And of course, really incredible number of GOP senators are saying, well, we don't really need the score. We either know what it is based on previous scores of other iterations of the bill, meaning they know that 25 to 32 million people are going to lose their insurance, or they don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter because it's the only vehicle in town and you have to do this. And so, interestingly, Jeff Stein, healthcare reporter for Vox, tried to round up some GOP senators and ask them about what was going on. And this is just the most hysterically upsetting read you'll ever have.
Oh, okay.
So the piece is entitled, GOP Senators Are Rushing to Pass Graham Cassidy. We asked 9 to explain what it does. It's in your list there. It's got a little yellow V in the left-hand corner so you can spot it.
All right.
And it says, it goes like this. Republican senators are struggling to articulate why they are rushing to pass their last-ditch effort to repeal and replace Obamacare over the next 10 days before running into their September 30th deadline.
Okay.
In interviews with Vox on Tuesday, 9 Republican senators primarily argued that their Hail Mary bill, spearheaded by Graham and Cassidy, would return federal power to the states. Although I think Lindsey Graham actually phrased it as it's either federalism or socialism.
Yes, that's his claim.
Because otherwise, my God, we might have to vote on Bernie's bill.
Yeah, which you wouldn't really have to do, but okay.
No.
I'd be happy if you did.
Republicans, by the way, we know this is going to happen. It's just one of those things where we knew it's going to happen, and we also knew it's not going to work. So Republicans are trying to blame the whole fiasco on Bernie's bill.
I see.
We have to do this because Bernie's bill, of course, they were doing this before Bernie's bill.
And Bernie's bill is just a bill. It's only a bill.
It's only a bill. It's not really going anywhere.
Sitting on Capitol Hill.
Right. And the other side of the coin, of course, is they're trying to appeal to their own people because it's their own people who are going to get screwed, especially, interestingly, folks in Louisiana.
Yeah.
They're going to get hit one of the hardest because anybody who actually even tried to expand Medicaid takes a huge hit because they're trying to get rid of Medicaid, essentially.
Okay. Well,
anyway,
I thought people liked that.
Well, they do, but that's why they don't want you to know. So it's socialism. Far less clear is exactly how Graham Cassidy would pull off, fixing anything, giving greater flexibility to improve your health systems locally, right?
Okay.
So they asked people. Other Republican senators, meanwhile, fell back on political explanations for a bill that experts warn could result in millions losing their insurance. If we do nothing, it has a tremendous impact on the 2018 election, said Pat Roberts, and whether or not Republicans still maintain the control, and we have the gavel.
Yeah, that's pretty raw.
That's really important. That's way more important than whether or not you have health insurance.
I guess so. I mean, to them, it certainly is. They're covered.
Another approach, and I'm going to read you excerpts from the experts here. Richard Shelby said 4 of our states are getting a disproportionate amount of money from health care now.
What?
But the bill wouldn't cut Alabama, so I'm for it.
Okay. But it would.
Eventually, yes, but not right away.
Right. So
here's Pat Roberts. They asked him, okay, just explain what this bill does. That's the funny part. Senator Pat Roberts, Senator, I wanted to ask you for a policy-based explanation for why you're moving forward with the Graham Cassidy proposal. What problems would this solve? Roberts said, well, it's the last stage out of Dodge City.
Yeah.
And Jeff Stein says, I'm just trying to explain to our readers what the policy. And Roberts said, what readers? Who do you represent? It's a website called Vox, Stein says. All right. Graham Cassidy is the last stage out of Dodge City. I'm from Dodge City. So it's the last stage out to do anything.
So why are you leaving Dodge City?
Everybody out of Kansas is supposed to understand he's talking about a stagecoach, right? For you young kids out there.
I see. Gotcha.
Who didn't grow up with like the Lone Ranger. Okay?
Yeah, right.
He's talking about the stagecoach. It's the last stage out to do anything. Restoring decision-making back to the states is always a good idea, but this is not the best possible bill. It's the best bill possible under the circumstances. If we do nothing, it's a tremendous impact on 2018 elections. He's worried about losing the gavel here.
Right.
And Stein says, but why does this bill make things better for Americans? How does it help? Roberts, pardon me?
What now, huh?
What? Why does this make things better? What is this doing? And Roberts says, look, we're in the back seat of a convertible being driven by Thelma and Louise. Now we've moved from stagecoach to convertible.
And Thelma and Louise as well.
Which is otherwise known as Progress. We're in the back seat of a convertible being driven by Thelma and Louise, and we're headed toward the canyon. That's a movie you've probably never seen. And Stein says, sir, I know who Thelma and Louise are.
You've never seen that, but Stagecoach from Dodge City.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have to get out of the car, and you have to have a car to get into, and that's the only car there is. That's his entire explanation of the policy and the impacts on the American people.
Right.
That's it. There is no other.
Why do you have to get a car into another car? What's wrong with just getting out of the car? It's headed to a canyon.
Put the horse in the trunk and let's go on, and something about shooting up the bank and Wells Fargo.
I guess so. I mean, that's a Stagecoach.
If you don't understand what he said, it's okay. I don't think anybody does. Senator Jim Inhofe, Republican, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
What is the policy explanation for the Graham-Cassidy bill? You sound skeptical. What substantive problems does this solve? Inhofe. Well, first of all, as a general rule, the states do things better than the federal government does. And that's essentially what the bill is. We actually had a bill that passed, except at the last minute. We had one deciding vote against it that was unforeseen. So technically that bill didn't pass, right?
Technically and really. We had a bill that passed, except the one it didn't.
Except it didn't.
Yeah, right. We had Superman save the Earth, but he didn't.
So if you think this is doublespeak, perhaps,
God.
Maybe it's because it is. Right? It's a stronger position for the states to be in, and generally Republicans agree with that. And Stein says, I understand what you're saying with the states having the ability to make decisions, but the bill doesn't just give states more freedom. It also cuts federal funding to the states. By the way, I'm adding this, like $4 trillion.
Yeah, that's a lot of trillions.
So it's not just about giving the states more control. It's also about cutting federal expenditures, right? Well, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's good. I mean, the efficiencies that come with transferring funding to the states can very well make up the difference.
So we make it up in volume.
Right? It's pretty much is what he's saying. A philosophical difference, And Jeff Stein says, no, I don't know. What do you mean? And Inhofe says, well, it's more efficient when it's done from the states so they can do it with less money. And Stein said, are you confident? And how do you know these savings will be close to enough to protect everyone? And Inhofe says, well, nothing protects everyone. When you push them to really talk about what they're thinking, it's, as somebody pointed out, it's not just stupid, it's cruel.
Yes.
Ted Cruz isn't stupid, he's just cruel. Cruz says, my central focus in the beginning has been on lowering health insurance premiums. This, in and of itself, is an incredibly stupid thing to say, but Cruz knows what he's saying. He's ignoring, for example, the rest of the health care costs that go along with having insurance. If you have incredibly tiny premiums and huge deductibles so that you can't actually use your insurance,
right?
You've brought down the premiums, you've helped no one.
That's true. I can lower my own premiums. I'll just pay less.
Yeah, just don't buy insurance.
I mean, I won't get any
premiums
coverage.
Will be zero, and you'll have no insurance.
I don't know. I can kick the crap out of these guys with lowering premiums. Snap of a fingers.
Exactly. So he's into premiums here. So the biggest reason so many millions of people are hurting under Obamacare is it's made premiums skyrocket. And what I think is critical for Obamacare repeal is that we expand consumer freedom so you, the consumer, can be in charge of what health insurance you want to buy. And we lower premiums so health insurance is more affordable. In other words, he wants to sell junk insurance.
Yes.
Which is what we got rid of because it didn't help anybody when you actually got sick.
Right.
And Stein says, well, why not wait until the CBO says what you're saying about premiums? Why not confirm with them? Over the first few votes, the CBO suggested premiums will go up and that tens of millions of people would lose health insurance. And Cruz says, well, CBO's analysis through this process has been ridiculously slow, unreliable, and based on policy assumptions, demonstrably false. Which, of course, is nonsense. I have this nice piece from factcheck.org, CBO's Obamacare predictions. How accurate? Turns out they're very accurate.
Oh, you mean, okay, wow. That's something. Someone should tell Ted Cruz.
Right? They predicted that something like 30 million people would lack insurance, and it turned out the actual number is 27.9 million people, for example. Right?
Yeah.
But you didn't call it a magazine, or you did call it a magazine, so you're not entitled to talk about this anymore. I forget what that was all about. So Cruz is just like nuts about this.
Sure.
And what federal spending, and Stein says, you really believe that cutting federal spending by 34% will not result in any other people losing their insurance? And Cruz says, well, what federal spending is cut? And Stein says, well, Medicaid expansion will be gotten rid of, for one.
Yeah.
And Cruz says, oh, the decrease in future rates of growth is not a cut. It's only in the bizarre world of Washington that billions more money is characterized in the process as a cut rather than an increase, which in fact is what it is. And in fact, $4 trillion less dollars is being put into the system.
Right.
So Cruz is just flat out lying.
I mean,
he's not stupid. He's just lying.
Well, that's true. And I wish it's too bad. I don't know. Maybe Jeff did ask him about that following, and it's just not that important. But of course, a increase in the future.
They have to get 9 senators in here, so there's not room for everything.
Because an increase in the future rate of growth is not compliant with reconciliation rules.
Yeah, that's another story.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Senator John Kennedy, Republican of Louisiana. Read the bill and you'll understand it. So Stein says, what are the policy explanations? And Kennedy says, well, it's an improvement. And besides, I want to give guardrails to the states to say you can't use these monies to set up a state-run single-payer system.
Right. Because
I don't believe in it. I think it's a mistake. This is great. We want, or who put this? Somebody did. Somebody had this great quote. I think I even sent it to you. So I think it's on the list there. Something about we want the states to run everything. Okay, well, let the states do single payer if they want. Oh, that's socialism. You have to get rid of the states.
Repeal states.
I mean, the whole concept of what he's doing is it's really important to have states get flexibility. Well, what if they want to do single payer? Well, I'm going to have an amendment that says they can't do that.
That's helpful. It mirrors my own policy. I will vote for any John Kennedy for Senate because of John F. Kennedy, and he had a great record. Well, I'm a John Kennedy. Not you.
Another reporter, Lauren Gambino, who works for The Guardian, interjects at this point. Do you think that kind of goes against the idea of states' rights and being able to use this money as the states want to? And Kennedy says, no, we have plenty of federal rules that apply to states, but we still agree with state rights. What are the main policy explanations for getting behind this bill? What does this bill do? Well, it's an improvement. Why? Well, my position has always been, number one, Obamacare is a failure, and number two, first chance I get to vote to repeal it, I do it. And number three, if it's a replacement, then it's better.
Okay.
That's
We're replacing it with chuck wagon dog food. Excellent.
Right. So what are the policies exactly that make you think that? Well, I think it spends scarce resources in a more rational manner and controls costs. How does it do that? Well, you need to read the bill.
Yes.
But you're voting for it. What's the explanation for how it does these things? I am voting for it because it gives states added flexibility. Read the bill and you'll understand.
Yes.
In other words, I have no idea what you're talking about. Stop trying to pin me down.
Yeah. Garbage, obviously. And, of course, states more efficient. They need to be able to do what they want unless they want to do what they want, in which case that has to be stopped.
Right. Not to read all of them in detail, but each one is just like worse than the other. Richard Shelby basically says it wouldn't cut Alabama.
All right. Well, I would cut Alabama.
Johnny Isaacson said, I don't know what the numbers are going to look like. That's not the point.
Okay.
Right? John Barrasso, the governors who decided to expand Medicaid knew they were going to lose.
Why?
Luther Strange.
We just heard they
I
won.
like the idea of sending money back to the states and letting the states experiment. Jeff Stein, do you worry about the billions in cuts in federal aid? Well, that's the kind of detail I haven't seen. Anything in particular you'll be looking for? Well, how it affects the state of Alabama. We'd be looking for protections with pre-existing conditions. What else matters? Oh, all of it matters.
Uh-huh.
But what if they're not in there? Well, then it doesn't matter.
Oh, I don't even know what to say to this.
I'm trying to find a logic in this. I'm trying to follow it, giving them the benefit. But this gives you an idea of what our senators are doing. What are they really doing? I'll tell you what they're really doing.
Okay.
Okay? And it's not that complicated. It's actually relatively simple. The Koch network says,
yes.
and this is a story in The Guardian, the Koch donor network will give the GOP $400 million for 2018 only if the Affordable Care Act is repealed and tax reform passes.
So this is like one of those. I
think that's a much more satisfying explanation than the torturous logic that the senators are trying to use to explain this stuff.
It's one of those movies where if you don't get married by X day, it's like Arthur, right? He's going to lose all the money unless he marries Susan Johnson. It's a movie you've probably never seen. But anyway, I guess that's it, right? Or, you stand to inherit millions of dollars, but only if you pull
Is that the one with Dudley Moore,
stunt.
the actor I've never heard of?
Yes, that's the one. But there's plenty of movies just like that, and you go through all sorts of crazy machinations to try to make it work. But in
only
the
to
end,
find out in the end you fall in love with the person you were just doing it for convenience.
Right.
So in the end, the Koch network really wants to give these Republican senators money, but won't do it unless you do what we say.
Okay. Well, that's nice of them to offer up that money. I have to play our warning music. We have a couple, 20 seconds to talk our way out of this, but I think we're stuck with the break. So, all right. Well, we can line up what comes next if you will stay with us until the other side of our 2-minute break for station identification. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show, right here on Netroots Radio, a very professionally staged station identification break. We're here with Greg Dworkin, and still rounding up our morning news and headlines and overnight on the Cassidy, Graham, and who else is involved in this? I missed out some of the other names that you wanted to...
Well, Heller and Johnson. Heller is on it so that you don't yell at him, and Johnson is on it because he's just as dumb as the rest of them.
Okay. Well, all right. Good enough reason for me. It's certainly consistent with the rest of the logic here. So let's see. We were rounding up all the crazy senators. You could go on forever with that, but I understand you don't want to.
Well, it gets you mad.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy, and it may be something that I spend the rest of the day on. But there is more out there. A lot of chatter about. Well, we mentioned Jimmy Kimmel.
There's a really, really good piece in Vanity Fair, which, by the way, has been doing some great journalism. This one's by Laura Bradley. It's called Kimmel Furiously Rails Against Bill Cassidy's Scam Healthcare Bill. There's a new Jimmy Kimmel test for you, the late night host said Tuesday. It's called the lie detector test. You're welcome to stop by the studio and take it any time. And basically, Kimmel is mad because he had Cassidy on the show. He says, Cassidy lied to my face. He told me that what they're working on would cover kids like mine, in effect is what he's saying, I'm summarizing, and it doesn't. And he says it satisfies exactly none of the provisions Cassidy, because Cassidy's the one that called it the Jimmy Kimmel test, not Kimmel.
True.
Satisfies exactly none of the provisions Cassidy sanctimoniously vowed to protect, and Kimmel was having none of it. I know you guys are going to find this hard to believe, Kimmel said Tuesday. But a few months ago, after my son had open heart surgery, which was something I spoke about on the air, a senator named Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, was on my show, and he wasn't very honest. Seemed like he was being honest. He got a lot of credit and attention for coming off like a rare, reasonable voice in the Republican Party when it came to health care, for coming up with something he called, and I didn't name it this, he named it this, the Jimmy Kimmel test, which was, in a nutshell, no family should be denied medical care, emergency or otherwise, because they couldn't afford it. The Graham-Cassidy bill, which the senator proposed alongside Lindsey Graham last week, actually does pass a Jimmy Kimmel test, but a different one. With this one, your child with a pre-existing condition will get the care he needs if and only his father is named Jimmy Kimmel.
In other words.
Otherwise you might be screwed.
Right.
Those were his words, Kimmel continued. He said he wants coverage for all, no discrimination based on pre-existing conditions, lower premiums for middle-class families, no lifetime caps, and guess what? The new bill does none of those things.
That is amazing. I don't know how you get out of bed.
Well, so here's Senator Cassidy's statement in response to give you an idea of how carefully crafted and thought out not only this bill is, but his response. It's short. I'll read it. Statement from Senator Cassidy. We have a September 30th deadline on our promise. Let's finish the job. We must because there's a mother and father whose child will have insurance because of Graham, Cassidy, Heller Johnson. There is someone whose pre-existing condition will be addressed because of GCHJ. I dedicated my medical career to care for such as these. This is why GCHJ must pass. I read that. It says nothing. In no way does that answer any of Jimmy Kimmel's points. And all I can say is thank you, Senator Cassidy, for not talking about stagecoaches and convertibles.
I guess, at least
that's the only positive thing I can say about this statement, which is a piece of crap.
Yeah, well, it was talking about a piece of crap. There was very little chance that it would have any substance that differed from the crap that underlay it, I guess. But this is... I don't know.
Well, folks,
they don't
get
care.
mad. Call your senators. Call your representatives. Tell them you don't want this bill.
Yeah. By the way, if you have already called your senators, well, of course, you can always call them again. And I do hear
mine yesterday.
I hear lots of rumors. I'm not certain how true they are, but a lot of people are reporting that when they call, their call is answered very quickly and by a live human being, which is not usually the case when phone lines are being jammed. So there was some indication that there was a lower volume of calls, and lots of people credit the defeat of the last go-round to the volume of calls and complaints. So that would be, that's a little bit worrisome. Also, if you've called your senators, you can call your House members as well, because they're going to have to pass this thing, and they're going to have to pass it as is, and very quickly at that, if the Senate takes it up on the 27th. Remember, they have the deadline of the 30th. I mean, I guess in theory, the House could take its sweet time and pass it, so long as they pass it unamended, even after September 30th. I think that's technically still a possibility. No one's really looked into that. But the House will have to act, and you might as well call and harass your House members now and tell them what a disaster this thing is. And you know very well, and you can play on their sympathies too and say, you know how stupid the Senate is. You don't want to swallow what they have to give you. Don't do it now. Don't do it for this. And,
well, they're trying to wear people down without question. I've called my two senators. I've called my representative. They happen to all be Democrats. They weren't going to vote for it anyway, but I called them to tell them I support their strong no on this and keep fighting and keep talking. And they really want to wear people down and hope that you're not looking. I don't think that's going to happen. Let's get to the technical stuff a little bit, though. But, how does it fail? Well, basically, right now, they don't seem to have the votes, and it's probably the same three senators plus or minus Rand Paul that it was before. It's hard to imagine Collins would be a yes, and it's hard to imagine Murkowski would be a yes when the governor of Alaska said would be a disaster for us. And both of those two senators were lauded for their vote by their constituents when they went home.
True.
McCain, of course, is the wild card because Lindsey Graham's his best friend. And if it weren't for the fact that Lindsey Graham was his best friend, I'd say, this is pretty lock for McCain to be a no. I suspect McCain will still be a no. Mm-hmm. I think he'll draw it out to the last minute because he likes the attention. And Rand Paul, in his comments, appears to be as solid a no as possible, and the Republican observers and staff members and such keep reporting him as a solid no. In fact, to the point where they're making fun of him as being the guy who saved Obamacare. But it's Rand Paul, so it's impossible to know what he would do. You could you could offer him an amendment to name the White House after Ayn Rand, and he would vote on the amendment and it would fail, but he would feel assuaged that he got his, thing that you were supposed to throw him, and he could flip to a yes. I mean, it would take something stupid like that to make him flip because, his convictions are centimeters deep. So I don't necessarily trust them, is what I'm saying. That's what happened last time. No, and then yes when it came to the vote. But I think it's the same three people. And, for the Republicans to say this bill has momentum, we have 48 or 49 votes. There was always 48 or 49 votes for anything they do for the reasons that the senators who I read to you are saying. We have to do something because there's an election and people will be mad at us if, we don't do something. It doesn't matter what the something is. The something can be terrible, but we have to do something. So, that's where that stands. As far as whether the House would vote on it, the Speaker of the House, Mark Meadows, said that they would take it up and vote it as is. So therefore, that's what the story is. Okay.
Well, they might not pass it, but I think that the House could probably pass the thing as is, even though they don't know what's in it. But they do. I guess from the perspective of we have to do something. I mean, has anybody thought about cutting $1 from Obamacare and saying that's enough?
Well, the alternative on the table was so viable, the Alexander Murray approach, that McConnell had to pull it and get rid of it.
Yeah.
For now. I mean, there's still a deal to be made there. Chuck Schumer said there was a deal. I don't know if that's true. Chuck Schumer says there was a deal and they pulled it because they wanted to go with this piece of crap, in so many words. I don't know if it's true that there was a deal, but there's no question, I think, that Alexander Murray would come back if this disappeared. It's just that it might not be in a timely fashion. And by the way, they're so wrapped up with this, they may not have time to reauthorize CHIP, which is the children's insurance.
Oops. Gee, I wonder how that happened.
Well, they pulled CHIP in order to put this on the menu. And, again, their efforts are focused. And McConnell's playing super hardball. And Pence is going to make himself available in case he's the deciding vote. So they're taking it seriously. But that still doesn't mean they have any more votes than they did last time.
No. Well, it would be terrific, of course, to see this thing defeated on substance. It would be terrific to see it defeated on politics alone, and watching a second go-round fail.
It would be fun. It'd be a lot of fun. Won't happen, but it'd be a lot of fun.
Name it. What?
Collins votes no. Everybody expected that.
Yeah.
Murkowski votes no. People sort of expected that. In a dramatic fashion, McCain reluctantly decides to vote yes.
Yes.
Everybody looks at Rand Paul, and Rand Paul says, I'm not going to be the guy that saves Obamacare. I vote yes. Mm-hmm. And Alexander says, I'm pissed, and I vote no.
That would be good.
It won't happen, but boy, that would be fun.
It would be fun. And although, hell, if you really want to talk about it fun, how about Murkowski and Collins vote no, and then Pence votes no? That would be even more fun. What? Oh, I messed up. Sorry. That would be great. I pressed the wrong button. Oh, a butterfly ballot. I punched the wrong hole. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Well, none of that will likely happen, but I don't know. The Alexander
old Monty
thing
Python scene from the Holy Grail where the old man disappears on the bridge, right?
Well, yeah, it would be Alexander. I mean, that's a good call. He has good reason to be pissed, but he's a better soldier than that.
Or it turns out Alexander and Corker vote together, and they both vote no.
Yeah. Or Graham votes no. You know what? I changed my mind.
That's not going to happen. No, the one that would do that is Heller.
That could be. Oh, my God. What am I, crazy?
I got another call from somebody else. I got to change my mind now. I don't know.
Maybe.
So a lot of stuff could happen there. Anyway, so there's that. I'm going to wrap up my segment here, but I'm going to leave you with two detailed think pieces.
Uh-oh.
Which I'll mention. You can ignore them if you want.
Okay, I think
the second one.
Yes.
We'll start with the second one, and then we'll do the first one.
That's how thinky they are.
Yeah. The second one is from James Hohmann from the Washington Post, the Daily 202. That's the area code in Washington, D.C., of course. Why conservatives love Trump's UN speech so much?
Because they dumb.
Because he talks tough and they love it. And basically, I'm reading this article. All the diplomats hated it, and all the people who have an understanding of international affairs hated it. Our allies were really nervous. Conservatives loved it because there was a lot of saber rattling. And I really think that after reading this piece, I better understand what conservatives really need is a therapist in chief. Oh. They have to have somebody there who keeps stroking their insecurities And talking tough to North Korea and calling him Rocket Man at the UN is how you get there.
Yes. Okay. Rocket Man. Controversial. The controversial Rocket Man label.
Which he said at the UN.
Yes.
Two diplomats in the room.
Yeah, and apparently being warned. Naturally, staff told him don't use it at the UN, and he did. And
yeah, so he did.
Okay, fine. Because they said don't, he did it.
Right. And then the last piece here, which is my first big think piece, which I led off with the pundit roundup today. I just think it's fantastic. I've already ordered the book, and I'm hoping it arrives today, tomorrow. E.J. Dionne, Norm Ornstein, and Thomas Mann have a piece called "How the GOP Prompted the Decay of Political Norms."
Yes. That's a book.
It's I don't know what the title of the new book is, but it is from their new book.
Oh.
And basically, the Republican Party laid the groundwork for dysfunction long before Donald Trump was elected president, and talks about how norms, which are defined as a standard or pattern, especially a social behavior that is typical or expected of a group, how a person's supposed to behave in given social settings. We don't fully appreciate the power of norms until they're violated on a regular basis, and the breaching of norms often produces a cascading effect. One person breaks with tradition, expectation, behavior previously considered inappropriate, like grabbing somebody's pussy and bragging about it, is normalized and taken up by others. Donald Trump is the normless president, says Norm Ornstein, and his ascendancy threatens to inspire a new wave of norm breaking. And that would be bad enough if he were entirely a one-off, an amoral figure who suddenly burst on the scene, but Trumpism has long been in gestation, and then the whole rest of the article talks about how the Republicans got it there. I believe the title of the book is One Nation After Trump, a guide for the perplexed, the disillusioned, the desperate, and the not yet deported.
Okay. Plus his name is Norm, so he knows what he's talking about.
Exactly right. Anyway, I thought it was a fantastic piece, and I'm looking forward to it being a great book. Talks about tribalism, and of course talks about Newt Gingrich and how he ruined everything.
He did.
Well, that's why that's the little teaser for David, so he'd read it.
All right. I probably won't read it. Is there a movie?
Nah. Is there a movie?
Yeah, like if they make a movie, I'll watch that.
But if you make a movie, you change it.
Yeah, true. But usually in such interesting ways, and then my wife complains. That's not what happened in the book.
Exactly. So that's the whole point.
Right.
Anyway, speaking of things that have nothing to do with anything, I got a great story for you, which is completely different and just so bizarre. It's entitled, "The Week My Husband Left and My House Was Burgled, I Secured a Grant to Begin the Project That Became BRCA 1.
What?
It's the story of a woman professor whose husband leaves her, but leaves him a vacuum cleaner as a parting gift. And who has all these other issues, but it turns out she is a world-class researcher who holds it together and gets this fantastic grant despite all of the troubles. And it's a reminder that science and other good things don't just happen. It's actual human beings doing this. And sometimes 20 years, 30 years later, you make movies about them, about the code breakers in World War II, or brilliant mathematicians, or maybe the lady mathematicians who happen to be of color, who helped the space program, and they're wonderful movies. But here's one you can read about real time.
I guess so. Oh, it sounds like a movie is probably coming out on this one. What kind of vacuum was it? I'm curious. I will read it.
That's exactly what my reaction was. She says, the week of April Fool's Day of 1981 began badly. That Sunday night, my husband told me he was leaving me. He had fallen in love with one of his graduate students, and they were headed back to the tropics the next day. I was completely devastated. It was totally unexpected. 33 years later, I don't know what to say about it. I was just beside myself. He gave me a new vacuum cleaner to soften the blow. And my reaction, of course, was, well, what kind of vacuum?
Yeah, I mean, this is 1981. It wasn't going to be.
That's a guy reaction.
Right,
it's a fantastic. It's complete snark. Don't write in
unbelievable.
With mad stuff. It's really an unbelievable thing.
What
a beautiful essay, and just a lesson in life about how sometimes you just have to keep going.
Yeah, I am. I'm curious as well. Not really about how the guy's mind. Like, well, how would that soften the blow? Okay, who cares? That's not the story. This is what an amazing start? I'm curious about the rest of the story and not
Well,
what kind of vacuum
I'll
it
leave
was.
both of them with you. You can do with it
1981.
what you will. And in the meantime, you're not here tomorrow, so I'm not calling in
Right.
tomorrow. Did I get that
You
right?
can call if you like.
But you won't be there.
Right.
So I will
all.
wind up talking to you on Monday. In the meantime, this is Greg Dworkin speaking with my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the morning. Thanks so much for listening, folks. Hope the sound quality is good. David, I think, has perfected the art. And we'll be back next week. David has a full show to do today, of course. And perhaps something will be recorded for tomorrow. Definitely a live show Friday.
Yes.
So take care, and we'll talk to you.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Greg. And thanks for this start. Got to find out what kind of vacuum cleaner it is. Also, importantly, this is at the Huffington Post. Actually, Huffington Post or the UK Post. Do they call it the HuffPo in the UK or what? It's HuffPost United Kingdom. Okay, but you know how they are, and there's other stories that they promote alongside whatever you're reading. Did you? So I'll ask you: did you spot the third Hadid at the Tommy Hilfiger London Fashion Week show? No, I didn't. It's accompanied with a picture of what I assume is two Hadids. Who are they? I don't know. They're models. They're famous people of some kind. You never know what they're going to be promoting at HuffPost, and even less so, I would guess, at HuffPost UK. Wow, but interesting. The week I left my husband, or rather, the husband left. I wish he had left her husband. House was burgled, probably for that new vacuum cleaner, and the grant. What is BRCA1? I am not even familiar. Can I should have asked Greg that. Maybe he knew. What is this? How long would it take to read this story just to find out what's up with BRCA1? I don't know. It looks like an interesting story though, but it's pretty long. I have a feeling that it would be better if we left that Okay, it's the gene that tells women about their breast cancer risk. Okay, well, that makes good sense. I'm glad that they discovered, or they secured the grant to begin the project that became that. And it was probably really tidy around there, too, as well, because they had a vacuum cleaner around. Every woman, he says, knows what it is. Every woman, and then men who are doctors or who have read a thing or two in their life would know what that is. It's not top of mind for me, but then again, well, I don't know. Well, should I get snooty about it? Explain reconciliation, then. She probably could, too, because she's obviously brilliant. Anyway, it's just one of those things that I didn't pick up on, but now I'm glad I know. The vacuum cleaner. Amazing. All right, I am fascinated, but, you know, we'll begin the rest of the show by saying we're going to leave it for you to read. We will, of course, hand the link over to Scott, who will put together today's summary. If this show can even be summarized, I don't know if we can contain it. That's how big it could possibly get. The show held out a lot of promise at the beginning, of course, as Bill tweeted out this morning that Kagro X has no choice but to totally destroy all other radio shows, and that's true. Reluctantly come to that decision. There's really no reason why anybody else should be listening to any other shows, with the possible exception of everything on Netroots Radio and other people who I consider friends and will excuse from this destruction on an ad hoc basis. If you can email me now and let me know, I'll leave that all out. Also, no other podcasts. I've decided that you should blow up Chapo Trop House and just give us all their audience. I don't see any reason why that shouldn't happen. Let's see. I'll catch up on other comments as well. Michael Musson, let's see. I think we now understand how fragile, quote unquote fragile, the Affordable Care Act is based on how much effort is required to kill it. I guess that's true. They haven't been able to stomp it to death yet. This is after something like coming up on 8 years of trying and 70-something votes to kill it. They still haven't got the job done and are likely to fail one more time. So we'll see whether sabotage does the trick afterwards. Let's see, another comment from Michael. Hey, Trump, GCHJ, doesn't have any provision for gold plans. Do you really want to sign a bill without gold plans? That could possibly work with him. Let's see. Mad Hatter discussing things here. GOP masters are demanding their payment. That's what's behind the insane drive to pass the bill that nobody understands or cares about what is in there. Yes, okay. Kate Sherrill also sharing the Jimmy Kimmel clip. I did see it. I played it this morning at home, or at least the last couple minutes of it, and it's excellent and you should see it, but there's no chance I don't think I would get away with playing the entirety of the clip in the show. We would be caught up in the copyright filters and our show would be banned from YouTube, or at least for the day. Anyway, another comment, and a good one here from Mad Hatter, saying that going after Capito, Senator Capito from West Virginia, would be a good idea. Why? Because Senator Manchin is apparently at his most popular in West Virginia, facing re-election as he is, at his most popular since voting no on the disastrous bill that would have bankrupted everyone and possibly killed thousands, if not more, in West Virginia. This one will only do worse, and so he could of course only bolster his reputation by standing in opposition to this one, and maybe Senator Capito could enjoy the same. Kate just clarifying she didn't intend for us to play the whole thing, just wanted to share it with the listeners. We'll do that. We will grant your request. It's not like you made any special request here. We would like to share that with everybody too. But she's more importantly giving me a link to where we can find it so that you can see it. Probably by the time it is time to do a summary of the show, or publish the summary of the show, it will be available on the front page. I'm sure it's available in the diaries right now over at Daily Kos. Maybe we'll swap it out for a link to Daily Kos just to keep things in house. I'd be astonished if it wasn't already there. But thank you. Yeah, Kate, you know that I know that you know that we couldn't play that thing on the air. We could split it up into little segments and make comments on it and slip past the copyright issues by adding to things, by commenting along the way. Although all we'd really be doing is cheating the scanning computers by slicing it up into small enough segments that maybe it wouldn't care. But we'd also have a legal defense to the whole thing. But hey, you just listen to what he had to say for yourself. It's pretty good, and it's always powerful to have a popular culture figure like that making things plain to people and explaining what really needs to be done and who are the appropriate targets for outrage. So I thank Jimmy for doing that, and keeping in mind that he's going to be fine, and no matter what they pass, he's going to have enough money to take care of his son, and that's great. He's doing this because he knows that there are people who don't have millions of dollars in the bank and are going to face the prospect, he puts it very well, of having to decide between the financial future of the family and the health and possible survival of one or more of their children. It's gripping and saddening. It's devastating to have to even contemplate what people are going to have to do under this bill if it were to pass. And really, might as well remind everybody of things that they're going to have to do if this bill doesn't pass, but the Trump administration continues to sabotage the Affordable Care Act in the way they've insisted they're going forward. So there's some it's bad stuff. Okay. Let's take a look then over in Pocket. I'm sure I filled Pocket with all the other things I wanted to share with you. There was the Price private jet travel story, which there's more detail in the Politico coverage, and it'll detail the other trips that he took. But suffice to say, he's wasting a tremendous amount of money for no discernible good. These things are arguably connected to his service as, if you can call it service, as Health and Human Services Secretary, in that he's going to meetings and seminars and the like. But other than that, I mean, it's absolutely not necessary that he be there. And of course, some of these panels that he speaks at are at luxury resorts around the country, et cetera, et cetera. It's a huge waste of money, and there's no getting around it. We got to go for the moment. It's about time for us to play our outro music. Or isn't our top of the hour break no, I thought it was at 59. Is that not the case? My alarm hasn't gone off yet, and so I'm going to trust that and say we're doing our 1 minute break at the top of the hour. And we're getting close to it, certainly. But we're still about a minute out. So we can tease what's coming up next instead. And here's a short quickie that we can consider. Melania Trump's pick for ambassador to Slovenia has dropped out from consideration. Apparently, the Donald gave her the option to hand pick the person he would plug into the ambassadorship to Slovenia because she is Slovenian. And she had somebody in mind, and they were like, yeah, I'm not so sure I actually want that job. Okay. Well, by my reckoning, we are ready for our break at last. And we will cut out, I don't know, I thought we were going to cut out. But, I'm getting some conflicting messages. You just sit there and relax, and I'm going to continue on as if nothing changed, even if something did. And we'll be back after this 1 minute break at the top of the hour for station identification. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show after our brief break. Sounds like Greg says everything went smoothly, so despite whatever panic we had there at the last minute trying to figure things out, you heard every bit of our panic. How's that? So it's a lucky bonus. That's a nice little trick you got there. Greg says his Mac notifies him that there's a break coming up. That's an excellent idea, to set your own alarms for that, just so you don't have to rely on the music necessarily. Anyway, I think we've got this stuff pretty much down. I don't have to change my alarms every day the way I have to change my settings, preference settings in Skype to make everything work. I still have not figured out why it won't just let my changes lie as is in between daily broadcasts, but it's not going to do that. So anyway, Melania Trump got the chance to handpick the ambassador to Slovenia. I don't know whether the Donald will give her a second chance. That would be interesting to watch and see how he treats this. But who was this handpicked person? Kelly Roberts, a California businesswoman who should that not be whom? The First Lady had helped select for the post. Okay. Reportedly withdrew her name from consideration over issues with divesting her assets. Why would she have to do that? That's crazy. What's wrong with you, lady? Nobody has to divest anymore. Trump had pushed for Roberts to be named to the post because she felt a businesswoman would best represent the U.S. in Slovenia. She's married to a businessman, so, and I think she thinks she's a businesswoman in her own right. I am not certain I would necessarily classify her that way. But then again, I'm not certain I would classify Ivanka that way, and she definitely thinks she's a businesswoman in her own right. Anyway, it might not make that much of a difference if the ambassador to Slovenia isn't a career diplomat. And we have, non-career diplomats in a lot of relatively important ambassadorial posts under most administrations. Is very often political appointees posted to some of our closest allies, where you might think it would be super important to have a career diplomat. But because I guess we're so close with some of these allies and have had such a good understanding and a good relationship for so many years, and under normal circumstances, there's a normal human being as president, and you can work out any gaffes that might come up by virtue of not having a professional diplomat as your ambassador. But here, we don't have that luxury. But what are we really saying? We're really saying Slovenia, it might not matter a great deal. I'm sure the Slovenian people are wonderful. We want to treat them with the utmost respect, etc. I don't know anything about Slovenia. NATO member, probably. I don't know. Doesn't make a difference in terms of certainly what I think makes no difference. And I'm not certain that Trump was going to send them any kind of a decent ambassador one way or the other. And the Slovenians probably know this and are perfectly comfortable with it. Whatever they send us, we'll deal. Just don't send anybody with smallpox, I guess, would be about the basic minimum they could ask for. Anyway, Roberts, I wonder what business she was in. Is that even in here? I'm reading The Hill's description of this. Jacqueline Thompson's story in The Hill. Okay, so I guess Melania Trump thought Roberts would be a good pick because she's a businesswoman. Roberts reportedly requested an ambassadorship to other countries, but agreed to take the job after Trump pushed her to. And I could see that one. There's probably lots of places she had in mind, probably being a big donor that she might like to be in. But if Melania Trump, being a Slovenian, personally asked you, would you consider the ambassadorship to Slovenia? It's a nice place, right? And I'm sure she could really get you in with the locals. I would do it if I were a Trump supporter. Of course, I might jump off a bridge if I were a Trump supporter. But if I was a Trump supporter and could live with it, then and was in and running for an ambassadorship, and Melania Trump said, how about Slovenia? How do you say no? And stay a Trump supporter. Would you be interested in being an ambassador to Slovenia? No, screw that. That place is a dump. You're in trouble now. You're not going to get invited to Mar-a-Lago. So the pressure is on to take it, but also, you say, you know what, that might not be a bad posting. It's a nice place. I would meet all the important people. She might even come and visit. I would look important. The president would come and visit me. Maybe these things could happen. I'd take it too. But it didn't last long. President Trump apparently never formally got around to nominating Roberts to the position because he loves his wife so much and respects her. But she had begun the background check process for the diplomatic post when she withdrew her name. Roberts and her husband, Dwayne Roberts. Does that ring any bells? Do we know what business that is? Is she the head of the business, or is Dwayne? Dwayne Roberts are both major Trump and GOP supporters, giving $50,000 to the Trump super PAC and $1.2 million in total to Republican candidates in the 2016 election. That's about how much an ambassadorship costs. Democrats do that too. Do we know what business they're in? I'm going to see if we can look that up using the fabulous and non-tracking DuckDuckGo.com. Let's see. Kelly Roberts. Is that going to bring anything up? Maybe I need to put in also Dwayne, if I can spell it, Roberts. Are they in business together? Do they both? Well, I'll tell you what. Kelly Roberts is a blonde-looking lady. Is a Trump girl. I mean, it's dismissive. She may be a very accomplished woman, but that is what we're talking about. She's, the long blonde hair and earrings and heavy eye makeup and wearing fur in this Wikipedia picture kind of woman. So, let's see. Yes, she's the vice chairman of Entrepreneurial Corporate Group. So she's an entrepreneur because it says so right in the name. And vice chairman and COO of the Mission Inn Hotel and Spa. And also president of Casey's Cupcakes and KRR Enterprises. So she is a relaxation, spa, and cupcake magnate. In case you were wondering, just sort of, what business is she in? I don't know what the story is with this fur she's wearing. Maybe it's faux fur. She owns this, the Mission Inn Hotel and Spa, a historic landmark hotel in downtown Riverside, California, which she owns with her husband, Dwayne Roberts. And like I said, also the president of Casey's Cupcakes. I don't know who Casey is. And KRR Enterprises. That's KRR, Kelly Roberts, but her middle initial is J, so I don't know what the R is. Kelly R. Us Roberts could be it. So there you go. The Mission Inn, it looks nice. It's a luxury spa or whatever. And what's with Casey Cupcake? Her daughter. There we go. So her daughter wanted to be in business, and cupcakes are hot. So therefore, I want a cupcake business, Mom and Dad. And they said, sure, because why not? Why wouldn't you want to give your daughter a head start in the world and establish a business? It's a good idea. Casey Brown is her name. Somehow. I don't know whether it was from first marriage or what. But anyway, Roberts co-owns Casey's Cupcakes. So they're only partly Casey's, I guess. A chain of boutique cupcake stores which won the Food Network's reality competition series Cupcake Wars in 2011. It's important. I'm a veteran of the Cupcake Wars. I survived with heavy wounds, and I expect that my veterans benefits will come soon and all my health care will be taken care of. Things I suffered from eating these cupcakes. I never had Casey's Cupcakes, but I consider myself a veteran of the Cupcake Wars nonetheless. Cupcakes were my personal Vietnam, something that Donald Trump will understand and appreciate and hopefully honor me for that. I hope that they will build a monument to me at some point and that there will be no fights about my monument because the Cupcake Wars, I think I served honorably. And quite honestly, it was very pro-American on both sides. And so there's really no reason to take those monuments down. I don't think I enslaved anybody to have these cupcakes made for me. But again, I didn't eat the cupcakes, so it's really not. There's more, by the way. They own other stuff. KRR Enterprises. What is that? It is a provider of botanical anti-aging products and hotel guest room amenities. In other words, the things they make get put in the room of the hotel that they own, and there's a vertical integration, and they pay themselves for it. What else have they got? Irvine and Roberts Family Vineyards. Roberts is an owner of Irvine and Roberts Family Vineyards in Ashland, Oregon, which produces Pinot Noir and Chardonnay wine, which are, golly, just super hot, and everybody loves it. So there you have it. I'm not sure where this picture of Kelly J. Roberts comes from, but everyone will be would have been very happy to have her as the Slovenian ambassador, but it's just not going to happen. I weep for America. Next up, on the list here, there's plenty going on. The Rocket Man, repetition of the Rocket Man in his UN speech, reported on here by the Washington Post. Also, I did see something tweeted out this morning. I guess I might as well isolate that tweet and save it for our summary of the day. According to one analysis, if you want to call it that, posted at Reddit, which, could just equally be full of garbage. I have no idea. This Reddit poster claims, according to this here tweet, which I retweeted earlier this morning from Amy Berg, a Redditor, as they call themselves, analyzes high-res photos of John Kelly, White House Chief of Staff, taken at the UN speech. You would likely have seen this reaction shot as it was being shopped around as of him burying his hands in his face over Trump's speech. But you might think, well, that's just an unfortunate shot taken at a moment of fatigue or whatever. But this Redditor says that if you look at a high-res version of this photo, you will see his watch on his wrist reads 10:20, which is almost exactly, just seconds after Trump actually allegedly, just seconds after he mentioned Rocket Man once again. And there was a lot of background reporting that said the staff said, please stay away from using the Rocket Man terminology at this formal occasion. He did it anyway, hands buried in face, and apparently the time stamps all match up. If you think you can believe, Redditors of any kind. I don't know. I got no reason to believe that it isn't true. That's where I would bury my face in my hands. But then again, I'm not John Kelly, White House Chief of Staff. Other things worth noting. Let's see. CNBC reporting here. Oh, I guess I have a CNBC report on it, but they're citing Reuters in all of this. Should I go to the original source? Do they link to the original source? This will tell us something important about the way CNBC operates. Oh, there's another way they operate. They're going to put in auto-playing video that I will have to cut off at the pass if I can. So, yes, according to Reuters, Trump is using campaign and Republican National Committee funds to pay his Russia probe legal bills. Isn't that interesting? The U.S. Federal Election Commission allows the use of private campaign funds to pay legal bills arising from being a candidate or an elected official. Trump would be the first U.S. president in the modern campaign finance era to use such funds to cover the costs of responding to a criminal probe, said election law experts. John Dowd, one of the two blabby Trump lawyers, declined to say how the president's legal bills were being paid, adding, "That's none of your business." And it's not, but what the hell, we would like to find out anyway. U.S. President Donald Trump using money donated to his re-election campaign and the Republican National Committee to pay for his lawyers because he's only a billionaire, you see. In the probe of alleged Russian interference in the U.S. election, two people familiar with the matter told Reuters. What are we talking about money-wise? Following Reuters' exclusive report on Tuesday, CNN reported that the RNC paid in August more than $230,000 to cover some of Trump's legal fees related to the probe. RNC spokesperson Cassie Smedile? How do you say it? Smedile. Smedile? I can think of 10 different ways to say this last name. Confirmed to Reuters that Trump's lead lawyer, John Dowd, received $100,000 from the RNC, and that the RNC also paid $131,250 to the Constitutional Litigation and Advocacy Group, a law firm where Jay Sekulow, that other idiot, another of Trump's lawyers, is a partner. That guy loves stealing money. And by the way, how would you like to be the lead lawyer and get $100,000, and jackass Jay Sekulow gets 30% more than you? That would, are you the lead lawyer or not? Why aren't you getting $131,000? The RNC, he always finds a way to skim extra. That's Sekulow. The RNC is scheduled to disclose its August spending on Wednesday. The Trump campaign is due for disclosure on October 15th. Again, you are allowed to do it, but no one's ever done it for a criminal probe before. Anything else that we should take out of this one? It does say down at the bottom, it says, following Obama's lead. Now, you may recall that Obama was never under criminal investigation, but Barack Obama in 2008, let's see, what is this thing? Oh, the reason Trump is able to tap into his campaign funds for legal expenses is because for the past decade, presidential candidates have abandoned public financing for their campaigns. Instead, they've built networks that collected millions of dollars from private donors, a move that comes with less restrictions on how the money is spent. Had he taken matching funds, of course, they would have been inextricable from the rest of the funding, and you wouldn't have been able to do this, I guess. Here's where Barack Obama comes into it. In 2008, he was the first to eschew public financing for his campaign, and all the major party candidates followed suit in 2012 and 2016. Trump also filed for re-election the day he took office in January, 2 years earlier than any previous president, ensuring a fund of millions in campaign cash would remain at his disposal. Plus, of course, there's $100-something million that they collected and never spent for the inauguration that no one knows where that went. I bet that's being used nicely, too. According to its most recent filing with the FEC, Donald J. Trump for President Incorporated had almost $12 million on hand by the end of June, an increase over $4 million since January. Let's see. Adav Noti, the senior director at the Campaign Legal Center, a watchdog group that describes itself as nonpartisan, said public campaign funds, as opposed to private funds that Trump has raised, can't generally be used for expenses arising from criminal investigations or for any expenses that arise after the campaign is over. Bill Clinton, who ran two publicly funded campaigns, had supporters start legal defense funds and used his own insurance to help pay legal bills during the Whitewater investigation. He still wound up with millions in personal debt, which he paid off through speaking fees he earned once he left office. Hillary Clinton, who ran they're trying to do both sides here. At least they're giving us some facts, though. Hillary Clinton, who ran a privately funded campaign, paid millions to campaign lawyers at Perkins Coie to handle routine legal matters, according to campaign filings. But that's to be expected. A campaign has legal matters that it needs lawyers for, and you would expect that would be paid out of campaign funds. So I don't know. There doesn't seem to be much to that one. Look, according to a July filing, the campaign paid $50,000 to the law firm of Alan Futterfuss, remember that guy, who's representing Donald Trump Jr. Futterfuss did not respond to requests for comment. Interesting reminder on that front. Now, on that same story, I believe Media Matters. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Think Progress had a comment they wanted to add on this one in the form of Rebecca and Tralgo's piece. Small donors are not the ones paying Trump's legal bills. It's worse. How is it worse? Well, I'll tell you. Donald Trump is using funds from both the RNC and his reelection campaign to cover his legal fees. We know this. Again, citing Reuters. Trump, who has claimed to have a net worth of $10 billion, used RNC funds to pay his personal lawyer, John Dowd, $100,000 and $131,000 to Jay Sekulow. The RNC also paid nearly $200,000 for Trump Jr.'s lawyers. That in addition to the $50,000 that Trump's campaign paid for Trump Jr.'s lawyers. While the president's reelection campaign fund solicits money from small donors, the RNC is not using these funds for Trump's legal bills, although if it's all fungible, I don't know how they know. Rather, the money is being paid through a separate RNC legal defense fund. That's how they know. This fund attracts almost exclusively large donors and can accept up to $101,700 per year from each individual or corporate PAC. Why that number? I don't know. According to the most recent FEC filings from July 2017, investment magnate Charles Schwab, Home Depot co-founder Bernie Marcus, and Richard Kane, the largest investor in energy pipelines in the United States, have all donated a $101,700 maximum to the RNC. Other recent donors include the the Mercers, Robert and Rebecca Mercer, the patrons of Steve Bannon, and advocates for some of Trump's most radical policies. Through this fund, the very wealthy can effectively make a personal six-figure gift to the President of the United States and his family, because they're all under criminal investigation, you see. The RNC fund was created in 2014 when a provision legalizing massive contributions to party legal defense funds was tacked onto a spending bill and quietly passed without public debate. The Washington Post called it one of the most significant changes to campaign finance system since the landmark McCain-Feingold measure, and it effectively tripled the amount of money a couple could donate to a party's national committee. The money was intended to cover legal costs associated with campaign matters like recounts, but after some debate, the RNC permitted the fund to be used to cover the president's legal fees for the investigation into his criminal conspiracy to steal the election entirely. But hey, I bet that was a short debate over there at the RNC. Anyway, very interesting, good point, and well worth keeping track of whose money is being used in all of this. Let's see. We should update you also on the Senate Intelligence Committee's probe into Trump Russia on, was it Monday? I guess it was Tuesday, that another Trump lawyer, there's so many of them, Michael Cohen, he used to be his lead personal lawyer, the so what guy, or says who guy, right? They're leading in all the polls. Says who? What polls? You remember the guy. We've never been to Czechoslovakia, and here's proof, a picture of my passport on the outside. That guy. Well, he was supposed to come and testify before the Senate Intel Committee, but apparently there was a deal ahead of time that he should not be speaking to the news media before he came and spoke to them. And like he does with almost everything, he says who? Who cares? I don't care. Rules don't apply to me. I'm too awesome. And the Senate Intelligence Committee, I guess, didn't take it very well. This is a tweet from NBC Politics that reads, Senate Intel Committee cancels meeting with Trump lawyer Michael Cohen for violating agreement to not speak to media. This per Ken Dilanian at NBC. And there is a screen grab of some text here that says Senate Intelligence Committee leaders canceled Michael Cohen's interview, as they were calling it, Tuesday, because they felt he violated an agreement not to speak to the news media, and they will now subpoena him, possibly to appear publicly. A source with direct knowledge of the matter told NBC News. Lawmakers were miffed, I tell you, when Cohen circulated a statement that included a blanket denial of collusion with Russia, the source said. There had been a mutual agreement that neither lawmakers nor Cohen's camp would speak to reporters about the testimony, the source added. So I guess now they're thinking about upping it to a formal subpoena, although I thought that the reporting immediately afterwards was that they were just simply going to invite him once again. So, really no teeth to their threat. So they rescheduled is basically what they ended up doing. But there you have it. That's the spin they want to put on it. Okay. You know what? We started this one yesterday, although, you know what? Maybe we'll save that one we can tape our show. I might as well just jump right into it after the show today into taping for Thursday. And then maybe we can get back to that story that promised possibly to be so juicy. The Trump in Moscow, what happened at Miss Universe in 2013 story. So we'll tease that for next time and instead stick to a couple of the other stories that didn't yet get treated today. We're going to see if we can beat the after show to the punch on a couple of these things, although I don't want to leave them without the good stuff, but they always find something. There's always something we miss. And even before we miss it, they know. They can pick it out. They know exactly what's going to slip through my fingers during the day, somehow, magically. Anyway, how about this one? Very interesting bit of news. AP covering this one. GOP governors launch a news, scare quotes, news site critics call propaganda. I don't think you even have to be a terrible critic to call this one propaganda. This reported with a Dateline in Atlanta. Bill Barrow, the author of the piece, Republican governors are getting into the, quote, news business. You remember when, wasn't it Pence that wanted to do this and have a state news agency when he was governor? This is probably right off of that game plan. The Republican Governors Association has quietly launched an online publication that looks like a media outlet and is branded as such on social media. The Free Telegraph certainly sounds like a news organization. It blares headlines about the virtues of GOP governors while framing Democrats negatively, so sort of like Breitbart. It asks readers to sign up for breaking news alerts. It launched in the summer, bearing no acknowledgement that it was the product of an official party committee whose sole purpose is to get more Republicans elected. So in other words, they're trying to hide the source here and pretend that they're a real news organization. Only after the Associated Press inquired about the site last week was a disclosure added to the Free Telegraph's pages identifying the publication's partisan source. The Governors Association describes the website as routine political communications. It could be. I mean, the content is probably the same. It's just you got to be clear about where it's coming from. Critics, including some Republicans, say it pushes the limits of honest campaign tactics in an era of increasingly partisan media and a proliferation of, quote, fake news sites, including those whose material became part of an apparent Russian propaganda effort during the 2016 presidential campaign. It's propaganda for sure, even if they have objective standards and all the reporting is 100% accurate, said Republican communications veteran Rick Tyler, whose resume includes Ted Cruz's 2016 presidential campaign. Poor guy. The website was registered July 7th through Domains by Proxy, a company that allows the originators of a website to shield their identities. Why would the Republican Governors Association be so interested in shielding their identity? One wonders. But that's the way they did it. The AP did a search. They didn't find any corporate or Federal Election Commission or IRS filings establishing the Free Telegraph as an independent entity. As of early Monday afternoon, the Free Telegraph's Twitter account and Facebook page still had no obvious identifiers tying the site to the RGA. The site described itself on Twitter as bringing you the political news that matters outside of Washington. The Facebook account labeled the Free Telegraph a media/news company. And I guess, in the loosest possible sense of the term, that's what it is. That's a contrast to the RGA's Facebook page, which clearly discloses that it belongs to a political organization, as is the account of its counterpart, the Democratic Governors Association. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Rather an abrupt break. I read right up to the break, and hopefully didn't cut me off any as we went into the break. But where we left off with the AP's story about this weird propaganda site that the Republican Governors Association has put together for itself. It was noting that the RGA's Facebook page identifies them clearly as a political organization, though the Twitter account for the Free Telegraph does not do that. But also the counterpart on the Democratic side, the Democratic Governors Association, likewise makes sure to identify itself as a political organization in social media. The RGA chairman, by the way, is Scott Walker, governor of Wisconsin. He deferred questions through a spokesperson to the group's national staff. At RGA, spokesman John Thompson said the site is, quote, just another outlet to share those positive results, unquote, of the GOP's 34 Republican governors. It's not unprecedented for politicians to try their hand at news distribution. President Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, hosted, quote, real news video segments in the summer. I guess she got bored with that and gave it up after they paid her, and now she doesn't do it anymore, or what? Anyway, those were posted to the president's Facebook page. You remember, we told that story here. In one typical segment, she told viewers she wanted to highlight all the accomplishments the president had this week because there's so much fake news out there. We just wanted to add a little more, I guess, is the unstated part of this. Vice President Mike Pence, when he was Indiana governor, pitched the idea of a news agency run by state government, but he ditched the idea in 2015 after criticism. Stupid, and it sucked. That was the criticism. In both cases, however, Lara Trump and Pence were not aiming to hide the source of the content. At least they had that going for them. The RGA site, though, has Democrats, media analysts, and even some Republicans crying foul. Democrats say Republicans are laying the groundwork with headlines that will appear in future digital and television ads, while also providing individual voters with fodder to distribute across social media. And that's true. I have no doubt that their ads will begin to say, it'll have like, Governor so-and-so, whatever Republican governor, is doing a fantastic job. Best in the history of the state, says the Free Telegraph. And they'll have the masthead up there in Gothic print or whatever they use to identify themselves and use it as a trademark type font. And it'll make it look like it came from a newspaper when in fact it just came from the Republican Governors Association. If that's what it said, if you watched an ad that said Governor Jones has done an amazing job here in Mississippi and you should reelect him, and the quotes attributed to the Republican Governors Association, I don't know. Most people would scoff at that and just say, of course they say that. But if it says, the Free Telegraph says it. Wow, I never heard of that. But look at that font. That's basically what it comes down to. Our politics is terrible, ladies and gentlemen. Our stupid discourse, as Atrios frequently says. Political communications, did we leave anything off here? Yes, we did. We almost missed our comment from our good friend Angelo Carasone, who runs Media Matters. They're just seeding the ground. He says they are repackaging their opposition research so it's there as news, and at any moment that publication could become the defining moment of the narrative in some state's campaign for governor. Angelo, do you say Carasone or do you say Carasone? You're probably even listening to the show. It's possible, right? You can let me know I would say either use the KITM hashtag, or if you know and you're not Angelo, you could tell me as well if you've met him, so I can get the pronunciation right for the next time Republicans do something horrible and the AP remembers to talk to you. Political communications expert Kathleen Hall Jameson, a University of Pennsylvania professor who has studied political advertising for 4 decades, said the Free Telegraph commits a form of identity theft by appropriating the integrity of news because the form of news carries credibility that blatantly partisan sites do not. That's Breitbart. That's what they do. Jameson was particularly critical of the RGA's initial failure to disclose its involvement. What we know about audiences is they factor in the source of information when judging that information. If you're denying the reader, the listener or the viewer, information you know the reader uses, the question is, why do you feel you need to do this? A recent RGA fundraising email said the site was fact-checking the liberal media and is a counter to decades of demonizing Republicans. Playing off President Donald Trump's dismissal of fake news, the email said the media can say whatever they like about us, whether it's true or not. Some of the Free Telegraph's content plays off of material from traditional media organizations and from right-leaning outlets such as the Daily Caller. RGA press releases are linked. Some headlines and photos are exact duplicates of RGA press releases. In the days after Hurricane Harvey made landfall in Texas and Louisiana, the site included headlines praising Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a Republican, for his response. There were no such headlines for Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards, a Democrat. The content is far tamer than that from sites that popped up during the 2016 presidential campaign to propagate sensational but baseless stories, but it does create a cache of headlines that could turn up in campaigns. The first test is this fall's Virginia governor race, pitting Democratic nominee Ralph Northam against Republican Ed Gillespie. Virginians already have seen another site, the Republican Standard, that is run by Virginia Republican operatives with ties to Gillespie, a former state and national party chairman, and to a firm that has been paid by the RGA. The Free Telegraph and its social media accounts frequently link the Republican Standard. Northam campaign spokesman David Turner accused Gillespie and Republicans of creating their own Pravda, a nod to the official newspaper of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. The Gillespie campaign declined comment, referring questions back to the RGA. So, exciting news with a local angle, for me anyway. Maybe not for you, but that'll be the first campaign in which this whole thing is tested out. We'll see how it goes. Are you jaded enough? Will you tell your friends, tell the people you know, tell people you don't know how this thing works? Maybe they'll even care. All right. What other interesting things have we got that we might share? How about this one? Let's go down over here. Oh, yes. You know what? Wow, should we add this now or should we do this? Why don't we do this one over here? I'm not certain about this source. Do you know what this is? I have a feeling this is something in the vein of Share Blue stuff, which is, very obviously Democratic and liberal leaning, but I don't, I'm hope. Well, you know what? It's not opening the thing up, so maybe we'll never get to it. I'll have to read it in Pocket View. Sparrowmedia.net, and by Sparrow at sparrowmedia.net. I mean, it could just be a blog here. I'm not certain how. It appears to be a relatively partisan piece here, but I thought this was an interesting take on things. It might stretch where we're really going to get from what's going on here. Payments to Trump hotels provide evidence for impeachment, writes Sparrow. So, it may be wishful thinking that we'll actually get to an impeachment proceeding on all of this, but just pointing out, once again, that individual accounts of individual payments to the president through his various properties are finally coming to the fore and being reported and documented now, and we ought not to lose sight of the emolument story. As Sparrow puts it here, the White House National Security Council, this is the story we're talking about now, has paid over $1,000 for an unidentified guest to stay 2 nights at Donald Trump's luxury resort, Mar-a-Lago, according to an invoice obtained by transparency group Property of the People via a Freedom of Information Act request. This payment, made with a U.S. government charge card, constitutes the first documented violation by President Trump of the Constitution's domestic emoluments clause. President Trump owns 99.99% of Mar-a-Lago LLC directly, and the company's profits are held in that revocable trust from which Trump may withdraw funds without any restriction. This and related documents were recently obtained via a FOIA request submitted by Property of the People as part of the organization's Trump Interesting. And you can find that at operation45.org if you're interested in reading more about that one. The NSC invoice is the strongest evidence uncovered to date that Trump's refusal to divest from his business empire has resulted in Trump's violation of the Constitution's anti-corruption domestic emoluments clause. This provision prohibits the president from receiving emoluments, that would be profitable payments, benefits, or other advantages, paid by federal or state governments beyond the salary approved by Congress. In the past, presidents possessing significant business holdings have divested themselves of their holdings or placed them into a blind trust prior to assuming office. Trump, however, has adamantly refused to do either. Instead, Trump has placed his business empire into a revocable trust administered by his sons, a move that has been widely viewed by experts as insufficient, particularly as he continues to self-deal through their charities and pay for the legal defense of the other one with RNC money and campaign money. This trust, though, is set up to allow Trump to withdraw any amount of money at any time for any reason at his request. So, there's nothing blind about it. And there's no divestment of any sort. There's not even anything you could hold up as a parallel to divestment. The release documents show that Mar-a-Lago charged the NSC full price, of course, for the rented room instead of offering the NSC a discounted rate covering only the resort's costs. The NSC receipt lists the rate paid by the National Security Council as the rack rate, meaning the standard non-discounted rate for the room. As such, the NSC's payment to Mar-a-Lago constitutes a direct, profitable payment from a U.S. government agency to a business personally owned by Donald Trump. It is a clear violation by President Trump of the Domestic Emoluments Clause of the U.S. Constitution. Property of the People also obtained invoices showing payments by the United States Embassy to Trump's hotel in Panama and documentation of payments by unidentified federal employees to Trump's Washington, D.C. and Las Vegas hotels. These payments were all made on official U.S. government charge cards. They were obtained through Property of the People's FOIA request to the United States Coast Guard, which administers the charge card program for the Department of Homeland Security. Why? I don't know. They didn't have enough to do, I guess. Interesting. That's a sign of some good research there. I would have to give some props to Property of the People for even figuring out, if that's the case, that the United States Coast Guard is the place you got to bring your FOIA request to find out who's using government charge cards to spend official funds at Trump properties. Good work. To date, discussion of the potential constitutional implications arising from Trump's business holdings had focused primarily on the Foreign Emoluments Clause. 3 lawsuits have now been filed against President Trump alleging violations of the Foreign Emoluments Clause, and legal scholars and cities across the country are already calling for Trump's impeachment on the grounds including foreign emoluments violations. Far less attention has been paid to the Domestic Emoluments Clause. The documents just obtained by Property of the People are the first solid evidence uncovered of Trump's violation of that clause. According to Property of the People Director Ryan Shapiro, these documents represent perhaps the clearest evidence yet that President Trump has violated the Domestic Emoluments Clause. The constitutional violation here is unambiguous, and it belongs in any forthcoming articles of impeachment, if there are any. Due to his glaring refusal to divest from his sprawling business empire, the president has no one to blame but himself. Shapiro and Property of the People are also calling on the Department of Justice, which has jurisdiction over potential violations of the Domestic Emoluments Clause, to investigate. Says Shapiro, these invoices are strong evidence of a constitutional violation and they warrant a thorough investigation by the DOJ. The complete set of documents obtained by Property of the People show that, 1, the National Security Council paid $1,092 for a March 3rd and 4th, 2017 stay at President Trump's luxury Palm Beach, Florida golf resort, Mar-a-Lago. The U.S. Embassy in Panama paid $632 for a March 23rd stay at Trump's International Hotel and Tower in Panama City. The Coast Guard paid $186.17 for a June 11th to 14th stay at Donald Trump's Trump International Hotel and Tower in Las Vegas. That's a pretty good rate right there. The documents obtained by Property of the People also reveal the Coast Guard paid $62.40 for food and drink at the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. on June 2nd, 2017. I don't know if those things are going to be regarded as nearly as important. The rack rate, though, by the way, is usually not what you end up paying. I don't think that's like the maximum allowable rate with the local regulations. But most often you find that you're paying, if you just check into a hotel on your travels, you're not paying the rack rate. You're paying a discounted rate from that most often. So they really charged them out the wazoo for that Mar-a-Lago stay. Wonder what that was about. The documents all obtained in response to a FOIA request submitted by Property of the People to the U.S. Coast Guard. They are also pursuing the release of charge card records from other federal agencies to which the organization has submitted similar requests. These agencies include the United States Secret Service, the Department of State, Department of Commerce, Customs and Border Patrol, the GSA, and the Department of Defense. Interesting, to say the very least. We'll see what comes of that and whether anybody takes any serious notice of it. By the way, it reminded me in saying that joining legal scholars and cities across the country calling for impeachment. Yes, that is in fact the case. But also state legislatures, I guess, are joining. And this here links to a Newsweek article from late May of this year. U.S. cities demand Trump impeachment investigation over foreign payments. Did we mention this one? Not real sure, but credited here, this story, though it's running in Newsweek too. Darren Zammit-Lupi of Reuters. Several cities across the U.S. joining a growing movement of local governments calling on Congress to investigate impeaching Donald Trump. Last Thursday, this is back in May, of course, Brookline, Massachusetts became the latest in a list of nearly a dozen American cities demanding the top lawmakers examine whether the president is breaking government rules, etc., etc. There's others listed here. The list has grown since February when Richmond, California, became the first to call for an impeachment investigation. Let's see who else is listed here. The Vermont town of Charlotte, Los Angeles, Alameda, and Berkeley in California, and Cambridge, Amherst, Pelham, Leverett in Massachusetts, all since having passed their own resolutions. But yeah, I mean, this is an actual thing here. It can happen. It doesn't automatically see the president impeached, and nothing happens. But this was something that we looked into in the George W. Bush administration, and we actually were able to organize and get people pushing in state legislatures to make these requests. Why? Not because it results immediately in a serious impeachment movement, and it's not going to change the minds of Republicans like, yes, well, a state has requested, and so now we must impeach the president. But it does give you gives you materials that you can use as a member of Congress. You don't have to have those materials. You can do this anytime, but anytime, say, a member of the House, and presumably similar in the Senate, but I know the House rules on this are, since the House, of course, initiates the impeachment, if there's a real impeachment, any member of the House raising the direct prospect of impeachment is making a privileged motion in the House, and basically the best they can do in delaying it. I forgot to turn off the phone today. I knew there was something. But basically the best that Republicans could do to shunt this aside, should a member of the House decide to bring up the topic of impeaching the president directly, is to say, you gotta submit maybe you could submit a written motion to the House, and we will decide within one day whether or not it represents a privileged motion that requires 1 hour of debate be set aside for deciding how to dispose of the motion within 1 day from its proposal. So that's something that came up in the George W. Bush administration, and something that Dennis Kucinich eventually took advantage of to call for the impeachment of Dick Cheney, you may recall. And we did an awful lot of research on this just to sort of confirm the validity of the procedure. And like I said, the resolutions from counties and states are not necessarily requirements for any member of Congress to speak up, but they do provide a decent background and some political backing. If your state legislature is calling on you as a member of the congressional delegation to take up this business, it's difficult to ignore if your state legislature is actually passing such a resolution. Let's take a look. I'm pretty sure I did put away in pocket the news that at least one state legislature had taken this up. And here it is. As a matter of fact, written up in the Hill a couple of days ago. Let's open it up. California, believe it or not, of course, asks Congress to officially censure Trump over Charlottesville. Not the same thing, and by the way, not entitled to the same privilege on the floor should a member of the House propose censure, though you could certainly still make a motion or bring up a resolution that would likewise implicate the privileges of the House and get preferred treatment and open up an hour of debate on the subject. California's legislature, the lower house of the California legislature, Friday night, this is a dateline of Saturday, so this would be last Friday, the 15th, Friday night, voted on a resolution urging Congress to formally censure President Trump over his response to violence last month in Charlottesville, Virginia. California sent a strong message to President Trump. Well, they'd like to think so, I'm sure. And the rest of the nation that we will no longer tolerate his behavior. California Assemblymember Tony Thurmond said in a statement, the measure urges other state legislatures to join it in condemning Trump and calls on the president to publicly apologize to all Americans for his racist and bigoted behavior. The resolution was prompted by Trump's comments that there was blame on both sides of a clash between protesters, including white supremacist groups and counter-protesters in a rally opposing the removal of a Confederate statue in Charlottesville. You know the story. The president was widely criticized for not explicitly condemning the hate groups involved in his initial and several subsequent responses, and then doubling down later on. Thurmond introduced a resolution charging that Trump legitimized hate groups, including the KKK and neo-Nazis, by failing to immediately blame them in the aftermath of the violent rally. The leader of the free world can't continue to use language that legitimizes the actions of extremist groups that promote hate, he said in the statement. Congress must exercise its power to check the president by voting for his immediate censure. On Thursday, Trump signed a congressional resolution condemning white supremacists. The resolution was intended by Congress to urge him to speak out against hate groups. We condemn the recent violence in Charlottesville and oppose hatred, bigotry, and racism in all forms, Trump said in a signing statement accompanying the resolution. The signing statement was criticized for some by failing to again specifically reject the groups referenced in the resolution, which were white nationalists, white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, and other hate groups. So not much satisfaction coming from that congressional resolution, though that wasn't necessarily the design. So getting some backup from state legislatures instead. Okay, getting close to the end of the show here, where it will be time to hand things over to the guys on the after show to bat cleanup. But let's see. One comment I wanted to pick up on here from our good friend BJ Hutch, who tells me that MTL girl means Montreal girl, which I had a bad guess at last time. I guess in reaction to the story about propaganda arms and the state press agency that Pence had proposed, pointing out that, CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting, is a company or corporation that they use for the last C. The CBC, their national broadcaster up in Canada, doesn't function as a propaganda arm. Neither does the BBC. That's true, though they could certainly be, I'm sure they are suspected of such by geopolitical enemies. I'm certain that when a report unfavorable to the Russian government is sourced to the CBC or the BBC or the ABC. The Australians have a similar setup, right? I don't know if it's structured exactly the same way, though. But they almost certainly dismiss that as government propaganda. We've come to know from long experience with CBC and BBC that they don't treat that relationship between the government and the broadcasting company that way, and that they're not usually suspected of simply being a propaganda arm. But I mean, you can mistreat the relationship, certainly, and if it's established for the purpose of doing its utmost to spread only good news about its sponsor and avoid any bad news about it, well, that's what turns you into a propaganda arm. But yes, it's true. Just because you are established by the state and directed to the mission of reporting the news, I mean, I guess if you report all of it, you'll uphold your reputation for good journalism. And if you report only that which the bosses want you to report, well, you'll fall into trouble. But true, there are better models out there than, say, Pravda and or some of the things proposed by the Republican Governors Association and former Governor Mike Pence. Okay, so I think that's about it for what we can cram into today's show. I'm just trying to do a quick look around. I'm getting some good ideas about what we might be able to talk about on the show. I will move into immediately at the close of this one, I guess, taping for tomorrow. So there's plenty of good stuff coming for tomorrow. Hey, man, I hope that the president doesn't tweet up any kind of amazing, goofy, or outright dangerous tweet storm tomorrow so that we're out of date. But I guess before we close things out here, what do? Do we adopt the form of sending hopes and prayers once again to Puerto Rico, under siege again from another Category 5 hurricane, unbelievably? Probably not caused by nuclear detonations in the Pacific Ocean. That's my personal opinion. But beat up once again, this time by Hurricane Maria, which God only knows where that thing's going. I don't even know. I should look in on Hurricane Jose. Where did that get to? Did it spin off into the ocean? Did it ever threaten to make landfall anywhere? Is it done? Are we finished with this? Jose and Maria, huh? That's it's not a good sign given the nature of the crazy biblical apocalypse prophecy documentary I told you at the beginning of the show that I had watched last night. Who knew? But, well, maybe it only interests the Spanish-speaking population there. But Jose and Maria, that worries me a little bit with the biblical implications. Anyway, that's not what we'll concern ourselves with for the rest of the day. We'll concern ourselves instead with what's coming up next on the after show with Wink and Justice, and I can even click a couple of buttons and get some text about what those things are. And then I'll share them with you, and maybe over a bed of some pleasant outro music, but not just yet. Here's what's coming up, though, on the after show with Wink and Justice. ICE agents mistakenly try to arrest a 20-year county employee of Latino descent. Oh, I always figured this has probably been happening all the time, right? 20-year county employee of Latino descent outside an Oregon courthouse. I never heard of them getting that excited about things in Oregon, but I guess it's a national phenomenon now. All this while Jeff Sessions was meeting with local cops. Boy, if only the Attorney General had been able to come outside and straighten that one out and leave no doubt as to the fact that, yes, I absolutely want to deport this 20-year county employee. He's of Latino descent. Jews in Texas. Sounds like a big blockbuster movie, but instead, Jews in Texas are hiding from white supremacists and holding holiday services at secret locations. How unfortunate is that? We are going to, of course, have to have some bolstered security measures at our own meetings tomorrow. That's a sad degraded state of affairs here in the United States of America. Well, more about that coming up next. And though leaders of the alt-right claim not to be racists or white supremacists, an undercover investigation reveals European and United States alt-right / neo-Nazi leaders boasting of a final solution of Hitler on banknotes, mass expulsions and concentration camps in America. How would you ever get Hitler on a banknote? I have no idea. For the last half, a visit with Angela Marks, a.k.a. Angie in Washington State, on Twitter, for a political and world news roundup that is, of course, the epitome of fire and fury such as the world has never seen
Daily
before.
Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Thanks for listening today. Yes, all of that, all the aforementioned, plus the Connect, Unite, Act, Daily Kos community calendar, and more on the after show with Wink and Justice Coming up next right here on Netroots Radio. If you're listening elsewhere and you need to find them and listen, it's netrootsradio.com. It's simple as that.